Hello, I'm Russian and I deeply love classical Russian literature. I really want to share with you the wisdom and openness of the Russian soul. My English is poor, but I don't want you to think this is just empty AI work. That is why you are hearing my voice now. I hope you liked what you will hear today. Thank you for understanding and enjoy.
How Much Land Does a Man Need? By Leo Tolstoy. Chapter 1. An elder sister came to visit her younger sister in the country. The elder was married to a tradesman in town, the younger to a peasant in the village. As the sisters sat over their tea talking, the elder began to boast of the advantages of town life, saying how comfortably they lived there, how well they dressed, what fine clothes her children wore, what good food and drink they ate, and how they went to the theater, promenades, and entertainments. The younger sister was piqued, and in turn disparaged the life of a tradesman, and stood up for that of a peasant. "I would not change my way of life for yours," said she. "We may live roughly, but at least we are free from worry. You live in better style than we do, but though you often earn more than you need, you are very likely to lose all you have. You know the proverb, 'Loss and gain are brothers twain.' It often happens that people who are wealthy one day are begging their bread the next. Our way is safer. Though a peasant's life is not a rich one, it is a long one. We shall never grow rich, but we shall always have enough to eat." The elder sister said sneeringly, "Enough? Yes, if you like to share with the pigs and the calves. What do you know of elegance or manners? However much your good man may slave, you will die as you are living, on a dung heap, and your children the same." "Well, what of that?" replied the younger. "Of course our work is rough and coarse, but on the other hand it is sure, and we need not bow to anyone. But you, in your towns, are surrounded by temptations. Today all may be right, but tomorrow the evil one may tempt your husband with cards, wine, or women, and all will go to ruin. Don't such things happen often enough?" Pahom, the master of the house, was lying on the top of the oven, and he listened to the women's chatter. "It is perfectly true," thought he. "Busy as we are from childhood tilling Mother Earth, we peasants have no time to let any nonsense settle in our heads. Our only trouble is that we haven't land enough. If I had plenty of land, I wouldn't fear anyone, not the devil himself." The women finished their tea, chatted a little longer about dress, and then cleared away the tea things and lay down to sleep. But the devil had been sitting behind the oven and had heard all that was said. He was pleased that the peasant's wife had led her husband into boasting, and that he had said that if he had plenty of land, he would not fear the devil himself. "All right," thought the devil. "We will have a tussle. I'll give you land enough, and by means of that land I will get you into my power." Chapter 2. Close to the village there lived a lady, a small landowner, who had an estate of about 300 acres. She had always lived on good terms with the peasants, until she engaged as her steward an old soldier, who took to burdening the people with fines. No matter how careful Pahom tried to be, it happened again and again that now a horse of his got among the lady's oats, or a cow strayed into her garden, or his calves found their way into her meadows, and he always had to pay a fine. Pahom paid up, but grumbled, and going home in a temper, was rough with his family. All through that summer, Pahom had much trouble because of this steward, and he was actually glad when winter came and the cattle had to be stabled. Though he grudged the fodder when they could no longer graze, at least he was free from anxiety about them. In the winter, the news got about that the lady was going to sell her land, and that the keeper of the inn on the high road was bargaining for it. When the peasants heard this, they were very alarmed. "If the innkeeper gets the land," they thought, "he will worry us with fines worse than the lady's steward. We are all surrounded by that land. We cannot live without it." So the peasants went to the lady and asked her not to sell to the innkeeper, but to let them have it. The lady agreed. The peasants tried to arrange for the village community to buy the whole estate so that it might be held by them all in common. They met twice to discuss it, but could not agree. The evil one sowed discord among them, and they could not settle the matter. So they decided to buy the land individually, each according to his means. At length, Pahom managed to buy 40 acres, together with some woods. The price was high, and he had to pay half in cash and half within 2 years. So Pahom put his affairs in order. He sold a colt and 1/2 of his bees, hired out one of his sons as a laborer, and took his wages in advance, borrowed the rest from a brother-in-law, and so scraped together half the purchase money. Having done this, he paid the money to the lady, and got the title deeds for his land. So Pahom chose his farm, and began to plow up his own land. He sowed it with rye, and it yielded a good crop. Within a year he had managed to pay off his debts to the lady, and to his brother-in-law. So he became a landowner, plowing and sowing his own land, making hay on his own land, cutting his own trees, and feeding his cattle on his own pasture. When he went out to plow his fields, or to look at his growing corn, or at his grass meadows, his heart would fill with joy. The grass that grew and the flowers that bloomed there seemed to him unlike any that grew elsewhere. Formerly, when he had passed by that land, it had appeared the same as any other land, but now it seemed quite different. Chapter 3. So Pahom was well contented, and everything would have been right if the neighboring peasants would not have trespassed on his cornfields and meadows. He appealed to them most civilly, but they still went on. Now the herdsman would let the village cows stray into his meadows, then horses from the night pasture would get among his corn. Pahom turned them out again and again, and forgave their owners, and for a long time he forbore from prosecuting anyone. But at last he lost patience and complained to the district court. He knew it was the peasants' want of land, and no evil intent on their part, that caused the trouble. But he thought, I cannot go on overlooking it, or they will destroy all I have. They must be taught a lesson. So he had them up, gave them a lesson, and then another, and 2 or 3 of the peasants were fined. After a time the neighbors began to bear him a grudge for this, and would now and then let their cattle on his land on purpose. One peasant even got into Pahom's wood at night, and cut down 5 young lime trees for their bark. Pahom, passing through the wood one day, noticed something white. He came nearer and saw the stripped trunks lying on the ground, and close by stood the stumps. If the thief had stripped the bark of many trees, it would not have been so bad. But he had chosen 5 of the best, straightest trees to cut down. Pahom was furious. If I could only find out who did this, I would make him pay for it, he thought. He thought, and decided, it must be Simon. No one else could have done it. So he went to Simon's homestead to look about, but he found nothing, and only had an angry scene. However, he felt more certain than ever that Simon had done it, and he filed a complaint. They were summoned to court. The matter went on from trial to trial, and in the end Simon was acquitted, as there was no evidence against him. Pahom felt still more aggrieved, and let his anger loose on the elder and the judges. You let thieves grease your palms, said he. If you were honest folk yourselves, you would not let a thief go free. So Pahom quarreled with the judges and with his neighbors. Threats to burn his house were even uttered. So though Pahom had more land, his place in the village was much worse than before. About this time, a rumor got about that many people were moving to new parts. There is no need for me to leave my land, thought Pahom, but some of the others might leave our village, and then there would be more room for us. I would buy up their land and make my estate bigger. I should live more at ease. As it is, I am still too cramped. One day Pahom was sitting at home when a peasant passing through the village happened to call in. He was allowed to stay the night, and supper was given him. Pahom had a talk with him and asked him where he came from. The stranger said that he came from beyond the Volga River, where he had been working. One word led to another, and the man went on to say that plenty of land was to be had there, and that many people were settling there. He told how some people from his village had settled there. They had joined the community and had 25 acres per man granted them. The land was so good, he said, that the rye sown on it grew as high as a horse, and so thick that 5 cuts of a sickle made a sheaf. One peasant, he said, had brought nothing with him but his bare hands, and now he had 6 horses and 2 cows of his own. Pahom's heart kindled with desire. Why should I suffer in this narrow hole if one can live so well elsewhere, he thought. I will sell my land and my homestead here, and with the money I will start afresh over there and get everything new. In this crowded place one is always having trouble. But I must first go and find out all about it myself. Chapter 4. Towards summer, Pahom got ready and went out. He went down the Volga on a steamer to the new place. When he got there, everything was as the stranger had said. The peasants were very well-to-do, and they received Pahom warmly. Pahom returned home, sold all his land and his homestead, sold his cattle, withdrew his membership from his old village, and with his family and his furniture and all his cattle, he moved to the new settlement. Pahom's family was large, and as the new village allotted land based on the number of male members, Pahom was given a total of 125 acres of arable land in different fields, besides the use of the common pasture. Pahom put up the buildings he needed and bought cattle. His allotment alone was 3 times as large as his old farm, and the land was good corn land. He lived 10 times better than he had lived before. He had plenty of arable land and pasturage, and could keep as many head of cattle as he liked. At first, in the bustle of building and settling down, Pahom was delighted with it all, but when he got used to it, he began to think that even here he was not satisfied. The land he had was communal, and he wanted to sow more wheat than his share allowed, so he had to rent extra land from others. He sowed much wheat and had a fine crop, but the land was far from the village. The wheat had to be carted 10 miles. After a time, Pahom noticed that some peasant dealers were living on separate farms and were growing wealthy. If I were to buy some freehold land of my own and build a house on it, he thought, it would be a different thing altogether. Then it would all be nice and compact. The question of buying freehold land recurred to him again and again. He went on in the same way for 3 years, renting land and sowing wheat. The seasons were good, and the crops were good, and he laid by money. He might have gone on living contentedly, but he grew tired of having to rent other people's land every year, and having to scramble for it. Wherever there was good land, the peasants would rush for it, and it was taken up at once, so that unless you were sharp about it, you got none. So Pahom began to look out for land which he could buy as his own. He came across a peasant who had bought 1,300 acres, but having got into difficulties, was willing to sell them cheap. Pahom bargained and haggled with him, and at last they settled the price at 1,500 rubles, part in cash and part to be paid later. They had all but clinched the matter when a passing dealer happened to stop at Pahom's farm to feed his horses. He drank tea with Pahom, and they had a talk. The dealer said that he was just returning from the land of the Bashkirs, far away, where he had bought 13,000 acres of land, all for 1,000 rubles. Pahom questioned him further. All one need do is to make friends with the chiefs, said the dealer. I gave away about 100 rubles worth of silk robes and carpets, besides a case of tea, and I gave wine to those who would drink it, and I got the land for a fraction of a penny an acre." And he showed Pahom the title deeds. "There," thought Pahom, "out here I have to pay a high price for land, and yet I can't get all I want. But there, for a small sum, I can get more than I can imagine." Chapter 5. So Pahom left his family to look after the farm, and took a servant with him. They stopped at a town on their way and bought a case of tea, some wine, and other presents, as the dealer had advised. On and on they went until they had covered more than 300 miles, and on the 7th day they came to a place where the Bashkirs had pitched their tents. It was all just as the dealer had said. The people lived on the steppes, by a river, in felt tents. They neither tilled the ground nor ate bread. Their cattle and horses grazed in herds on the steppe. The men were stout and merry, and all the summer long they never thought of doing any work. They were quite ignorant, and knew no Russian, but were good-natured enough. As soon as they saw Pahom, they came out of their tents and gathered round their visitor. An interpreter was found, and Pahom told them he had come about some land. The Bashkirs seemed very glad. They took Pahom and led him into one of the best tents, where they made him sit on some down cushions placed on a carpet, while they sat round him. They gave him tea and kumiss, and had a sheep killed, and gave him mutton to eat. Pahom took presents out of his cart, and distributed them among the Bashkirs, and divided the tea amongst them. The Bashkirs were delighted. They talked a great deal among themselves, and then told the interpreter to translate. "They wish to tell you," said the interpreter, "that they like you, and that it is our custom to do all we can to please a guest and to repay him for his gifts. You have given us presents. Now tell us which of our things do you like best, that we may give them to you." "What I like best here is your land," answered Pahom. "Our land is crowded, and the soil is exhausted. But you have plenty of land, and it is good land. I never saw the like of it." The interpreter translated. The Bashkirs talked among themselves for a while. Pahom could not understand what they were saying, but saw that they were much amused, and that they shouted and laughed. Then they were silent and looked at Pahom, while the interpreter said, "They wish to tell you that in return for your presents, they will gladly give you as much land as you want. You have only to point it out with your hand, and it is yours." The Bashkirs talked again for a while, and began to dispute. Pahom asked what they were disputing about, and the interpreter told him that some of them thought they ought to ask their chief about the land, and not act in his absence, while others thought there was no need to wait for his return. Chapter 6. While the Bashkirs were disputing, a man in a large fox-fur cap appeared. They all became silent and rose to their feet. The interpreter said, "This is our chief himself." Pahom immediately fetched the best dressing gown and 5 pounds of tea, and offered these to the chief. The chief accepted them and seated himself in the place of honor. The Bashkirs began to tell him something. The chief listened for a while, then smiled and made a sign with his head for them to be silent, and addressing himself to Pahom, said in Russian, "Well, let it be so. Choose whatever piece of land you like. We have plenty of it." "How can I take as much as I like?" thought Pahom. "I must get a deed to make it secure, or else they may say, 'It is yours,' and afterwards they may take it away again." "Thank you for your kind words," he said aloud. "You have much land, and I only want a little. But I should like to be sure which bit is mine. Must we not measure it and make a deed? Life and death are in God's hands. You good people give it to me, but your children might wish to take it back." "You are quite right," said the chief, smiling. "We will make a deed." "And what will be the price?" asked Pahom. "Our price is always the same, 1,000 rubles a day." Pahom did not understand. "A day? What measure is that? How many acres would that be?" "We do not know how to reckon it out," said the chief. "We sell it by the day. As much as you can go round on your feet in a day is yours, and the price is 1,000 rubles a day." Pahom was surprised. "But in a day you can get round a large tract of land," he said. The chief laughed. "It will all be yours," said he. "But there is one condition. If you don't return on the same day to the spot whence you started, your money is lost." "But how am I to mark the way that I have gone?" "Why, we shall go to any spot you like and stay there. You must start from that spot and make your round, taking a spade with you. Wherever you think necessary, make a mark. At every turning, dig a hole and pile up the turf. We will go round afterwards with a plough from hole to hole. You may make as large a circuit as you please, but before the sun sets, you must return to the place you started from. All the land you cover will be yours." Pahom was delighted. It was decided to start early next morning. They talked a while, drank some more kumis, and ate some more mutton, and then everyone lay down to sleep. Chapter 7. Pahom lay on the feather bed, but could not sleep. He kept thinking about the land. "What a huge tract I will mark off," thought he. "I can easily go 35 miles in a day. The days are long now, and within a circuit of 35 miles, what a lot of land there will be. I will sell the poor land, or let it to peasants, but I'll pick out the best and settle on it myself. I will buy 2 teams of oxen and hire 2 more laborers. About 150 acres shall be plough land, and I will pasture cattle on the rest." Pahom lay awake all night and dozed off only just before dawn. Hardly were his eyes closed when he had a dream. He thought he was lying in that same tent and heard somebody chuckling outside. He wondered who it could be, and rose and went out, and he saw the Bashkir chief sitting in front of the tent holding his sides and rolling about with laughter. Going nearer to the chief, Pahom asked, "What are you laughing at?" But he saw that it was no longer the chief, but the dealer who had recently stopped at his house and told him about the land. Just as Pahom was going to ask, "Have you been here long?" he saw that it was not the dealer but the peasant who had come up from the Volga long ago to Pahom's old home, and then he saw that it was not the peasant either, but the devil himself with hoofs and horns, sitting there and chuckling, and before him lay a man barefoot, prostrate on the ground, with only trousers and a shirt on. And Pahom dreamt that he looked more closely to see what sort of man it was that was lying there dead, and he saw that it was himself. He awoke, horror-struck. "What things one dreams," he thought. Looking round, he saw through the open door that the dawn was breaking. "It's time to wake them up," thought he. "We ought to be starting." He got up, roused his man, who was sleeping in his cart, and told him to harness, and then he went to call the Bashkirs. "It is time to go to the steppe to measure the land," he said. The Bashkirs rose and assembled, and the chief came too. They began drinking kumis again, and offered Pahom some tea, but he would not wait. "If we are to go, let us go. It is high time," said he. Chapter 8. The Bashkirs made ready, and they all started, some mounted on horses and some in carts. Pahom drove in his own small cart with his servant and took a spade with him. When they reached the steppe, the morning red was beginning to kindle. They ascended a small hillock and, dismounting from their carts and their horses, gathered in one spot. The chief came up to Pahom and stretched out his arm towards the plain. "See," said he, "all this, as far as your eye can reach, is ours. You may have any part of it you like." Pahom's eyes glistened. It was all virgin soil, as flat as the palm of your hand, as black as the seed of a poppy, and in the hollows different kinds of grasses grew breast-high. The chief took off his fox fur cap, placed it on the ground, and said, "This will be the mark. Start from here and return here again. All the land you go round shall be yours." Pahom took out his money and put it on the cap. Then he took off his outer coat, remaining in his sleeveless vest. He unfastened his girdle and tied it tight below his stomach, put a little bag of bread into the breast of his coat, and tying a flask of water to his belt, he drew up the tops of his boots, took the spade from his man, and stood ready to start. He considered for some moments which way he had better go. It was tempting everywhere. No matter, he concluded, I will go towards the rising sun. He turned his face to the east, stretched himself, and waited for the sun to show above the rim. I must lose no time, he thought, and it is easier walking while it is still cool. The sun's rays had hardly flashed above the horizon when Pahom, carrying the spade over his shoulder, went down into the steppe. Pahom started walking neither slowly nor quickly. After having gone 1,000 yards, he stopped, dug a hole, and placed pieces of turf one on another to make it more visible. Then he went on, and now that he had walked off his stiffness, he quickened his pace. After a while, he dug another hole. Pahom looked back. The hillock could be distinctly seen in the sunlight, with the people on it, and the glittering tires of the cartwheels. At a rough guess, Pahom concluded that he had walked 3 miles. It was growing warmer. He took off his vest, slung it on his spade, and went on again. It became quite warm now. He looked at the sun. It was time to think of breakfast. The first shift is done, but there are 4 in a day, and it is too soon yet to turn. But I will just take off my boots, said he to himself. He sat down, took off his boots, stuck them into his girdle, and went on. It was easy walking now. I will go on for another 3 miles, thought he, and then turn to the left. This spot is so fine that it would be a pity to lose it. The further one goes, the better the land seems. He went straight on for a while, and when he looked round, the hillock was scarcely visible, and the people on it looked like black ants, and he could just see something glistening there in the sun. Ah, thought Pahom, I have gone far enough in this direction. It is time to turn. Besides, I am in a sweat, and very thirsty. He stopped, dug a large hole, and heaped up pieces of turf. Then he untied his flask, had a drink, and then turned sharply to the left. He went on and on. The grass was high, and it was very hot. Pahom began to grow tired. He looked at the sun and saw that it was noon. Well, he thought, I must have a rest. He sat down and ate some bread and drank some water, but he did not lie down, thinking that if he did he might fall asleep. After sitting a little while, he went on again. Chapter 9. At first he walked easily. The food had strengthened him, but it had become terribly hot and he felt sleepy. Still he went on, thinking, an hour to suffer, a lifetime to live. He walked a long way in this direction also, and was about to turn to the left again when he perceived a damp hollow. It would be a pity to leave that out, he thought. Flax would do well there. So he went past the hollow and dug a hole on the other side of it before he turned the corner. Pahom looked towards the hillock. The heat made the air hazy. It seemed to be quivering, and through the haze the people on the hillock could scarcely be seen. Ah, thought Pahom, I have made the sides too long. I must make this one shorter. And he went along the third side, stepping faster. He looked at the sun. It was nearly halfway to the horizon, and he had not yet done 2 miles of the third side of the square. He was still 10 miles from the goal. No, he thought, although it will make my land lopsided, I must hurry back in a straight line now. I might go too far, and as it is I have a great deal of land. So Pahom hurriedly dug a hole and turned straight towards the hillock. He went straight towards the hillock, but he now walked with difficulty. He was done up with the heat. His bare feet were cut and bruised, and his legs began to fail. He longed to rest, but it was impossible if he meant to get back before sunset. The sun waits for no man, and it was sinking lower and lower. Oh dear, he thought, If only I have not blundered trying for too much. What if I am too late? He looked towards the hillock and at the sun. He was still far from his goal, and the sun was nearing the rim. Pahom walked on and on. It was very hard walking, but he went quicker and quicker. He pressed on, but was still far from the place. He began running, threw away his coat, his boots, his flask, and his cap, and kept only the spade which he used as a support. What shall I do? He thought again. I have grasped too much and ruined the whole affair. I can't get there before the sun sets. And this fear made him still more breathless. Pahom went on running. His soaking shirt and trousers stuck to him, and his mouth was parched. His breast was working like a blacksmith's bellows. His heart was beating like a hammer, and his legs were giving way as if they did not belong to him. Pahom was seized with terror lest he should die of the strain. Though afraid of death, he could not stop. After having run all that way, they will call me a fool if I stop now, thought he. And he ran on, and drew near and heard the Bashkirs yelling and shouting to him, and their cries inflamed his heart still more. He gathered his last strength and ran. The sun was close to the rim, and cloaked in mist looked large and red as blood. Now, yes now, it was about to set. The sun was quite low, but he was also quite near his aim. Pahom could already see the people on the hillock waving their arms to make him hurry. He saw the fox fur cap on the ground and the money on it, and the chief sitting on the ground holding his sides. And Pahom remembered his dream. There is plenty of land, thought he, but will God let me live on it? I have lost my life. I have lost my life. I shall never reach that spot. Pahom looked at the sun, which had reached the earth. One side of it had already disappeared. With all his remaining strength he rushed on, bending his body forward so that his legs could hardly keep up with it as he fell. Just as he reached the hillock, it suddenly grew dark. He looked up. The sun had set. He gave a cry. All my labor has been in vain, thought he, and was about to stop, but he heard the Bashkirs still shouting, and remembered that though to him, from below, the sun seemed to have set, they on the hillock could still see it. He took a long breath and ran up the hillock. It was still light there. He reached the top and saw the cap. Before it sat the chief, laughing and holding his sides. Again Pahom remembered his dream, and he uttered a cry. His legs gave way beneath him. He fell forward and reached the cap with his hands. Chapter 10. "Ah, what a fine fellow!" exclaimed the chief. "He has gained much land." Pahom's servant came running up and tried to raise him, but he saw that blood was flowing from his mouth. Pahom was dead. The Bashkirs clicked their tongues to show their pity. His servant picked up the spade and dug a grave long enough for Pahom to lie in, and buried him in it. 6 feet from his head to his heels was all the land he needed.